So this presentation that we're going to do today isn't so much about, it's not the presentation, it's about the creation of the presentation. So we were having, a couple of us were having a conversation, and we were talking, of course, about AI and the changes, and people, you need to get ahead of it, and all the things that we've all been talking about for quite a while now. And I said something about the dodo bird and the traveling agent, and we laughed at that. And so I didn't originally do this to present it here, but then I realized it kind of was a fun social experiment. So again, it's more about the creation of the deck than it is about the deck itself. And to be fair, in an environment like this, I'm very comfortable. I call my chat GPT Gwen. So when I refer to Gwen, I mean, she's a great employee. She compliments my ideas all the time. She is very inexpensive, especially compared to the rest of them. I mean, I jokingly call her my favorite employee, but that's not actually true. But some micro minutes and some days, she really absolutely is. So let me get, and I'm also doing a thing I've never done before, which I'm presenting right out of Canva. So what I did was I input one sentence into Gwen, and you're going to see that trail in just a second. And then I took what she gave me and I opened a Canva PowerPoint template and I threw it in there. And this entire presentation, start to finish, was 38 minutes, which I think is kind of the key part of the story. So hopefully, let me get to presentation mode. Present. Now, would I do this in another forum? It would have taken a lot more work because it doesn't so much have my look or feel to it. But I'm sure if I took the presentation that I'm about to show you guys and I put it in, I made sort of my changes, like I Lisa'd it and I put that back in Gwen, then the next time that Gwen created for me, as she does, it would sound and feel a lot more like me. So I just a couple of caveats to what you're about to see. All right, can you see my screen yet? No, you cannot. Share
We've
my
actually
screen.
got your presenter view on our side. So behind that, behind the one you're looking at, you need to enter full screen. Yep, that's it.
Yes.
Got
Okay,
it.
perfect. So, and somewhere along the way, I was talking to Simone, and it went from travel agent to traveling salesman because she really thought that was funnier. So I was fine with it. And there's the little, so it did the automation for us. Now there's some birds, some dodo birds that you're going to see, and those I did have to adjust just a little bit, but not much. So let me get. It's clunky, guys. I told you I've never done it this way before. All right, let me stop this and go back. So I just popped this in this morning. So this is me and Gwen. And as you can see, I said, right, a 5-slide presentation about AI's impact. And that's why it's called the travel agent instead. So this is what she immediately gave me, a breakdown of the slides. Did I want any adjustments or visuals? In this case, I said no. Oh, I did say visuals. Sorry. And there it was, download it. She had a chart that I asked for some clarity about the chart, and Bob's your uncle. I did thank her because when the robot overlords come, I want them to like me, but I didn't include that in the. So then I took the PowerPoint. I didn't even open it. I didn't even look at it. I drug it into Canva and I picked a template, and this is what it created. And you'll notice some of the backgrounds aren't exactly the same. Some of the text font colors aren't the same. But that had I chosen to fix it, it would have been, super easy to fix. And I don't remember if I don't think the bird visual came from Gwen. And what I should have done was re-pull that up, but I didn't. But there was one dodo bird that Canva knew to give me. And then I was able to right click on that and say, hey, give me a couple more of these. So as you'll see throughout the presentation, I do have a cute family of dodo birds. And then, what jobs are at risk. I'm not even, again, it's not really about what the slides say so much as how easy it was to create the slides. I did find this one kind of interesting, the financial analysis. And, honestly, as a business owner, I'm not putting in anything that's confidential, but I don't even use a calculator anymore. I'm terrible at math. I'm a words person and a visual. And everything, I mean, all my math is done now with Gwen. She is really a very critical part of my day. Now, I wonder, not being wired to be a math person anyway, as soon as I got a calculator, I knew I never had to do long division again, right? And I can't even really spell that well anymore because autocorrect's been there for so long. So I wonder about, I do have some concern about becoming too dependent. I need to write a sentence in an email and I find myself like popping over to Gwen to say, rewrite this. And at some point that's got to level out. And I don't think that I think that good prompt engineering is critical. And I don't think it's not using your brain. I think it's using a different creative part of your brain. And so when we get to the next 20, that's part of what I want to talk to you guys about. And then I think, I know that several of us have a real interest about the creative fields and the impact in the creative fields. So again, when we get to our 20 minutes, that's something I'm interested in hearing y'all's thoughts about. Here's what Gwen thinks that she and her family cannot easily replace. Although emotional intelligence is another thing. I'm not saying that AI has emotional intelligence, but I am saying that it is being programmed to simulate emotional intelligence in ways that are becoming pretty scary. And that's why exactly. We'll talk about that. And I do think this is, there's not anything groundbreaking here, but this is some pretty good advice. Something that we talk to a lot of people about is, be intellectually curious, get ahead of it. Yeah, AI is going to impact, has impact, will continue to impact. But a good way to stay ahead of it is to be the person who is the most curious about it. And, and now we know that we can create a sophomoric, but not terrible PowerPoint presentation in 38 minutes and very little thought. Again, if I were doing this in the real world, it would have been a great jump start. But he didn't want to use it as a jump start for you guys to see. I wanted to show it in its pretty raw data. And that's nowhere near 20 minutes, but that concludes the end of what I was given as a presentation for today. So
it is amazing how this stuff is just it's pretty cool.
Well, and my biggest questions are, hold on, I'm just going to stop this share.
Quick question. You've got notes in there. Did Gwen create the notes speaker notes for you as well?
Great question. No, I did that this morning just because I wanted to go back to the original. And then and then I had one of those moments where I thought, why am I doing this as text? Let me just use snippet and grab that quick little video, which is much more engaging anyway. So my questions are this. Have any of you guys used this kind of functionality in a more professional scenario? I know a lot of you guys create PowerPoints.
Never done the PowerPoint before. I did it today actually to write an email to somebody to help me rewrite an email because I thought that the email was a little bit too nice, funnily enough, and I needed it to be a bit more firm. And so it helped me rewrite the email for that. And I've used it to help me rewrite like recommendations and things like that. I do my my yearly reviews with my manager all the time through ChatGPT. I don't have a name for mine though. I need to do that. Should I call my ChatGPT?
Would a name actually, like, I know Lisa, you've chosen Gwen, but would a name or identifying or what's that word? Anthropomorphizing it, like giving it a personality. Would that not then limit your perspective about what it might do?
An interesting question. My initial thought for me and the way that I'm wired is no, because the people that I believe in the most are the people that I choose to be friends with. And I think every one of them has superpowers. So why would Gwen be any different?
So I have used for idea storming, not necessarily to create or follow along like a full presentation, but for idea capture, I've used Gamma. Has anybody ever seen Gamma?
I've seen it, but
Played
I
with
haven't tried
Gamma.
it.
I've used it.
Yeah, I think Gamma is a little bit more structured and it does it all in the tool versus going in and out of two different systems. I mean, yes, I suppose that it's how it's no different from any architecture stuff that we're going to work on in any system. But it's just sometimes if you just want something quick. My daughter was writing something on mycorrhizal fungi for her something for school, and I needed to get a presentation flow and was struggling with assembling the information into a structure that would make sense from a flow perspective. So she used Gamma to create the flow, but then she took all of her research and information that she had done and then populated along the flow. So sometimes it's what you're looking for from the tool, right? Is it information? Is it ideation? Is it flow? Is it facts? I don't know. It's what you're after, I suppose.
Yeah.
So I just have to say that it did take me a heartbeat to realize that you weren't saying cordial, fun guy. You were talking about mushrooms. I was like, what was your daughter's presentation about a nice, fun guy?
Type it in
You
the
have one of those
it's not fun, guys. Yes, mushrooms.
Yes, exactly. It took me a second.
I have actually used it like you were talking about, Lisa, where I've said, okay, here's the basic premise, synopsis, key messages that I'm looking for, blah, 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 blah. But once I pulled it into when I pulled it into Canva, I could then apply my own branding colors and all of that sort of thing. But I did, and my own fonts. So it is very easy to do that. But the key facet to it, and because I'm actually presenting about AI and robots and everything else, I think it's only right that I should actually be using the AI as well to see how, see what comes of it. However, I would shift things around. I might change my mind on wording. Sometimes my prompts would be, I'd like to have this in a more humorous way, and other times I might want to say this needs to be a little bit more hard hitting in terms of the business focus or whatever. So I think it does come back to the prompting as well.
I think Simone is completely correct. ChatGPT is garbage in, garbage out. If you want to have a structured result, you will need a structured prompt. And to get a structured prompt, you must understand your meta. If you don't understand the thing you want to create, ChatGPT will just throw the same garbage at you as you put in.
All right, we've got some hand raised. Mr. Worthington.
I'm curious if anyone has. I've been using the free version. What a surprise, right? But what I'm curious about is for the companies that get the paid version, how much are they tuning it for business purposes? In other words, how much are they arming their instance of ChatGPT to be really specific, to let them do specific tasks or align it with, for example, aligning frameworks or things like that? I tried to align COBIT, for example, with USM, and I could only do that to a point because I didn't have all of the details needed to do that at a granular level. I'm just curious if companies are doing stuff like that.
Why don't we do a a quick show of hands. Whose company is paying for an LLM for them to use? Raise your hand or put it in chat. We got 1, 2.
We're piloting with this particular group, but we are paying for it.
Okay, so 3. So Daniel, which LLM do they give you access to?
So we're teamed up with ChatGPT, and right now we do have different containers. We also have GitHub in our environment for our developers. So kind of 2 instances there. Primarily for the common user, you're able to do some coding assistance with the ChatGPT, but ultimately GitHub's the better one. Documentation, summarization, editorial assistance, email drafting, post-meeting support. And then from a PowerPoint standpoint, it is only content, like words, tables, and things like that. No images right now. But that is kind of the container that we have. We actually have like a built-in community within our environment that goes through, hey, can we also do this? Or what's in our roadmap for kind of these extra levels like what Lisa was showing us today.
Okay. And then Jan, you raised your hand. Which access do you have to?
Notebook LM.
Notebook LM. And then do you do
the big benefit of that is that you can create the source material and limit the whole questions to that source material. So I feed it with PDFs of the things I want it to speak about, and then I write a highly structured prompt, and then I get top quality results.
Nice.
And that is a huge benefit.
But no custom modeling. No custom constraints.
Modeling. This is more than enough, more than a normal person can handle.
Yeah.
I just managed to get work that I used to spend 3 months. I did it in something like 15 minutes.
Isn't it insane?
That was amazing.
Yeah.
So that is the thing that you can already do with the regular level of thing. If you want to use a thing like that, you can use it for automating simple routine tasks. That will save you time. But to really create beneficial results, you must have a structured prompt. You must understand the thing. You must do a little bit more. I simply, for instance, I've got one LM where I fed the system with everything I ever published.
Nice.
So I can now say, create a style according to the author of all this shit, and and write me a story about, and there comes a structured prompt, and then within a minute, and of course I need to do editing. My AI is nothing without HI.
Yeah.
HI is the dominating factor here.
Agreed.
So HI is the key, and AI is just an assistant.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can be surprised about what it brings, because it can spark your imagination in a wonderful way. You can do volumes that you couldn't handle by yourself, and all the benefits of AI. But it's all about structured prompting. If you want to have structured results, you must have structured prompting. And that means you need to understand the architecture behind your material. So I normally write my books using a method. That is text strategy. That's an architectural-based method about how the architecture of communication is structured.
Nice.
There's a lot of theory behind that. And if you understand that, you can write very, very simple, very effective texts, because you understand the architecture of communication.
I love
and
that.
Most people that came up with all kinds of prompting guidance and prompting techniques, they didn't understand that, so they came up with all kinds of shit, and that of course helped a little bit, but only outside. It's polishing the outside. If you really want to create inside stuff that really matters, you must understand your business.
I found that to be the case too. The more time you spend on it, the better you get at it. And I love that you point out it's not just trial and error. Like, look outside what you're doing in the LLMs to structure how you're writing and asking for this stuff. Julia, does your team, do they constrain your LLM, or do they train your LLM by specific content, or no?
No, we're just using, right now we're just using Gemini as it is.
Okay.
But one of the reasons we like using, or we moved to Gemini, was that it doesn't share our information, right? It is our instance, and Google doesn't do anything with it. So something like ChatGPT or Canva or whatever, anything you put in there, which is good for the large language model, learns from it, but then it's also anything that you want that's proprietary is now shared out. So yeah, that's what we're using.
Just to clarify, for ChatGPT, if you have an agreement with them and you're building it out within your organization, they can set it up where it doesn't touch anything outside of your
Thanks,
organization.
Daniel.
Yeah, that's how we have ours set up.
No.
And then Mr. LaRoche, you've got your hand raised. What you got over there, bro?
Good morning. I got up early for you guys. Aren't you impressed?
Love it. Love it.
No, I want to come back. Well, first of all, these tools have just taken leaps and bounds. So coming back to the time issue, can I add on to yours, Matt? The more time you spend, the more you're going to love it, the more you're going to get out of it. Yes. But I've also learned the art of the prompt is the key. So it's quality time, not quantity time. So being able to structure those prompts and to build that person inside of the machine. This last week, I learned a trick. You can use a ChatGPT prompt to create a ChatGPT prompt. And so I've built this little project over here, and I say, I want to make a ChatGPT that thinks like Matt Barron.
Yeah.
And it will come through and ask me the questions, and I will have a little Matt Barron down in my so whatever it was able to pull, whatever it was able to feed it. So that's one is the prompt is the key. And Adrian knows that with his products over in ServiceNow. You've got to build in that those instruction sets so it knows how to behave. The other is piling on to John's comments about Notebook. This is an astounding tool when you are gathering information, whether it's information that belongs in your organization or information, but just think about it as the library. So if you go to the library and you say, I just want to go to the nonfiction construction part of the library, and I want you to pull in all those books, you can pull in the material that you want and start creating knowledge just from that. And so this hallucination and going off and finding some other thread that you worked on, it's going to be very focused and targeted. So Notebook LLM is a great tool for pulling together a brief and then communicating that to a broader audience. So I love the case where the author put all of his own library in there, and he was kind of astounded what he might be able to write in the future with this thing.
Yeah, Rob England also did the same thing. If you're a Rob England fan, go check out his AI bot. It's called Ohm. It's got all of his writing in it over the decades. Fantastic tool if you're trying to understand what advice he would give you. And I'm realizing this, I didn't pay that much attention to it, but I did an AI presentation in Vienna last week, and the prompts, I didn't realize it, but all of my prompts have structure in them. Every single one of them talks about how to structure the response back. And some of the examples are really simple, like just creating incidents. How can you use an LLM to create incidents? How to use it, log analysis, how to use it as an IT leader to convince senior management to invest in specific. Pretty fascinating, but what you end up learning pretty quickly, especially when you're trying to put it into practice, is these public LLMs have a lot of bullshit in the models. They've been trained on all this marketing material. And so when
where did they get that from?
Where did they get that from? Who created that? It might have been me. I created the marketing material. I'm the one that did it. Okay. But what I found is that when I specifically asked around IT leadership, like, hey, I want to convince our senior leaders we should invest in experience management. The very first advice it gave was to buy an experience management platform. And I'm guessing that if we did the same thing with ITIL, I'm guessing it would do something very similar, because that's what all the marketing material says. And so what I'm really trying to do is I'm trying to get people to think, I'm trying to get people to shift their minds away from, I'm using this LLM and trusting it and loving the results, because it is super helpful as a coworker and as a thought partner, I'll say. Remember the bias. Remember that the model has garbage in it, because you don't want that garbage in your stuff. And I've caught my team, my marketing team, using it. And sure enough, we came out with an article and it said, step 2 of asset management is to buy an asset management tool. And I'm pushing back and saying, listen, guys, that is never step 2. That's like the last step is asset management tooling. And so just in your brain of brains, as you're out in the world using these things, please consider you are the human in the middle. Your job is to remove that bias and remove that bullshit from your responses.
Yeah.
Great conversation this morning, though.
Yeah, in some ways, we're learning all this new stuff. There are things we should remember, not to forget.
Well, yeah. Another thing that I point out in my AI presentation, in IT for the last 50 years, we've been throwing out data. We've found data. We've been, I can measure all this. Like a workstation's perfect example. All the freaking Windows logs on your Windows workstations. We've known since Windows is out that you can get these logs and find information, find patterns in them. But 32 years ago, when Windows XP came out, well, okay, maybe it was more like 25 years ago, but when it came out, we saw that data and we said, no, we don't want it. We won't look at it. We're not putting this into our operations. We aren't going to pull these logs. Moving these logs from computer to computer is hard because they're huge. And a lot of times it's just garbage data, like you said, garbage in, garbage out. And so all of those decisions that we made over the last 50 years, we need to reconsider. We need to find that data again and leverage it, because we said no back then because we had no capacity. We had no ability. We didn't have fiber internet, so we couldn't send these log files. The log files are so big that most of the software wouldn't even let you send files of that size. And now that we can get that data, we need to re-experiment. We need to say, okay, where is the data that we've said no to? Can we find that data and actually leverage it to our advantage? And the thing is like a lot of this stuff, you can do it manually. You totally can do it manually, even locally manually using Olama or some other local model runner, and harvest it yourself for free. In most cases, you can do it for free and offline, and you're not training a model, but there is someone that's selling it too, right? There's always now what's happening is all these vendors are realizing, we can run this stuff. We can set up an automation platform. So if people upload all their calls here, we'll transcribe them to this LLM, save them out on a data store, and then we'll do sentiment analysis and give them that data. And then we'll plug that into a reporting tool so they can get that as well. And they're selling that stack for $200 per user per month, but you can do it for free too. And so it's all about understanding what you're capable of doing, what risks you want to take on, and what you want to source to a vendor. Orion Mendez, you are so patient. What have you got for us today?
You were on a roll. I didn't want to interrupt.
I love it.
Yeah. The bits about historic data is really interesting because there was a place somewhere in Europe, Scandinavia somewhere, where they found all these buckets with brains. Okay, so if you look it up, the Buckets and Brains project, and they've gone and studied all these brains over the past, 50 years of brains that were collected from a mental institute of anybody who had schizophrenia or whatever, and they had the medical records, and they're now analyzing what the brain looks like so that they can then do studies and analysis to say, right, these are the features of this particular condition, or this is what would have happened. But what's interesting about that project is that they had kept the data effectively, both physical and the notes that were taken. In our industry, where there is huge volumes of data, you can look at any of the data sources. And it's interesting, to think what could be done, what questions could we be querying off of data, and where is that data kept? And so that's like a huge potential for solving whatever problems specific to particular industries. Medical is that example, but you can think about, like you were saying about call logs, it's already happening in some areas. Maybe at the point of the documentary I saw, it wasn't being done with AI, but now with AI, you can potentially accelerate the learning and get down the dead ends quicker, so that you figure out, okay, that line of query doesn't work or whatever. So something to think about.
Totally. Yeah. Use that ticket data, and tickets don't have to fit into one nice little category anymore, right? We've been so focused on categorization and subcategorization for so long. Now with good ticket notes, like if you're transcribing the actual contents of what's happening in a ticket, you should be able to use an LLM to then after say, hey, which of these tickets do they talk about Outlook? Which of these tickets are they talking about security problems? And find that data, even if the ticket isn't classified as a security issue. Now you can find that and say, oh, this ticket is actually part of 4 different categories. It's email, it's IP, it's copyrighted material, and it's risk. And we need all of those categories to understand.
Hey, Matt, with
what we're
something
doing.
like that, you're now getting intelligent swarming.
Yeah, exactly. It's a digital intelligence swarmer.
Well done.
Well done, Simone. Mr. Worthington, you're patient as well. What you got, man?
I'm just wondering if this whole surveillance capital and monetizing information, politicizing, is actually changing the data. What's the risk of the data being what we want it to hear rather than the actual truth? And that's going to really have a compounded effect when you apply AI to data that's not valid. That's pretty scary proposition. I mean,
John, are you confusing truth and fact again?
as usual, I always do. But it's happening. It's happening. You can see it. It's happening all over the place.
You think about how much data was deleted because the government is spending a huge amount of money on storing data and duplicate files across multiple agencies. So when you think about the costs, right, we're going to mitigate costs within government, huge data sets will be deleted. And the question is, right, what's the governance around that? So that's about the quality of data, but also does then raise all the other questions to do with the politics, which I don't really have a comment on. I'm just saying,
but
the data will only be what you find.
When you said that, it was so funny because you said duplicity and then duplicate, and I wanted to know
which one is right.
Well, actually, that was a Freudian slip. It was a Freudian slip.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it? Especially around governance.
Yes.
But you bring up a good point that data governance is super important. And a good example of this is the state of Minnesota. We've had a rule in the state of Minnesota that all public data must be formatted and designed in such a way that the citizens of Minnesota have access to it by default. So any government, any state government data, or even local government data in Minnesota has to be built in such a way that you can then leverage that data. And so what we're seeing is that we can leverage LLMs in a massive way, very easily and quickly, just because of our historical past. We've been like this for hundreds of years. And so your organizations need to also be thinking about this, because yes, it's super useful to create things with LLMs and it's super useful to just put it at work in our jobs. But think about the data and the systems that we're creating today and the way that we need to design and think about their future value going forward. That's really where strategy comes in. That's really where leadership comes in.
Yeah, we have
Such
a
a
tendency
fascinating topic.
We have a tendency to create data that tells us what we want to hear.
Yeah, we've been doing it for years in reporting, right? Years.
I see a data junkies. What can I say?
Yeah. And Orion put it well as well, like the duplicate data. We hang on to data so like we just, oh, must suck it all. Buy more terabytes. Buy more terabytes. But really, there's a point where you say, okay, normalize this data. When it's going into a data lake, making sure that it's not a multiple, I don't know, I can't Freudian slip this one, but making sure that it's not from an additional system that has the exact same data as something that you've already got in place.
Yeah.
Would you consider that data is an asset?
Totally, 1000%.
Accurate data.
Accurate data that is clean, ready to be consumed, categorized. That's what data management has been doing for the last 3 decades, building the data asset.
I'm still concerned, though, that AI will eat itself into oblivion.
I think we're all concerned about that.
Because that, it'll get to a point where what something was historically, but it's been so corrupted in its iterations that it can no longer recognize the original, or the original just disappears. And so the people that are learning, coming through the system, who do not know anything different to what's in there, will take that as the historical fact.
Yes.
Yeah, we need to hold on to old lessons, I think.
It's massive. Tribal knowledge. So for the longest time, we've been saying tribal knowledge is the bad knowledge, right? The stuff that's written down is the good knowledge. The stuff we take time to document is the good knowledge. Well, it's kind of flipping now. Not having personal thoughts, having discernment, having critical thinking is becoming the new power skill. Being able to say that data is incorrect and here's why has become the new skill that you need to have. Discernment is such an important skill. And I love what Simone said is that and if an LLM is creating a bunch of data and we're still training LLMs on publicly available data, how long until that LLM is modeling on its own creation?
Right.
I think it's probably already happening to a certain extent.
Oh, it is.
At a level, there's pretty much, from an LLM perspective, there's only so much data that they've already trained on already. So they're looking for more data to train on, but there isn't enough new data. But the new data that is being created is based on LLMs, stuff that's been created in LLMs. And a lot of it's junk. Some of it is good, but a lot of it is junk. So when I'm not too much into AI personally, but I do listen to a lot of tech podcasts and stuff that talks about the AI industry and stuff like that. But a lot of what they're talking about is what's beyond LLMs from an AI perspective, because they see the limitations of what LLMs as a technology does. So a lot of the more of the what I hear from some of the leaders in that field is more what's beyond LLMs, because the data we're getting is limited, and LLMs can only do so much.
I wonder sometimes if it's almost like, we've always said that from a human perspective, that it's like when we lost the libraries in Alexandria, all those centuries ago.
Good analogy.
We lost so much wisdom, so much knowledge, so much experience when that happens. And yet, one of the things that we kind of do is we rediscover old knowledge. And I wonder if that is the potential, or what will come after AI data oblivion.
I'm glad we don't have to have the answer to that.
I know. I'm like, wow. I need more coffee. Sorry.
For people that are interested, I just came from a leadership training, and I've been just dropping all this knowledge that I've been getting from this gentleman who's going to be doing a TED Talk soon, which he used AI to get his TED Talk, which is an amazing story. So it was Adrian Van Hall. He is Argentinian that then moved into the Americas, and he lives out in Denver. And he's been working in the hotel hospitality space forever. Like he worked in 2 of the top 10 hotels around the world. He worked at the Ritz in Paris. He worked at another one in Germany. And then he's now, through his story, now blind. He actually has some rare case of blindness that took over one of his eyes. Now it took his second eye. He used to be an avid cyclist where he was doing like 5,000 miles a year or something like that. But he told us that he got connected with a guy. Those stories always sound so funny. Got connected with a guy that said, I can get you your TED Talk through this process. Within a year, I'll be able to get you a TED Talk, because he's been trying for at least 5-6 years. And TED Talks are all about uniqueness. They do not want something that is already known out there. They want to hear something that is outside the box, that is not something that their listeners, their attendees have heard before or could go out there and see. So I don't know the AI system. He only gave us just the high level description, but the guy that he connected with had a series of questions that his AI would ask. He would ask Adrian. Adrian would then answer, and then it would give the next couple questions. And it was all about what information and what knowledge he had. And then AI ended up regurgitating all of that information and spitting out, here are the 3 to 4 different areas that make you more unique than everybody else's story that's out there that we were able to find. Then he honed in on those 3 to 4, got it down to 2, so kept writing, and then he recently submitted, and then he recently got approved to do one of the TED Talks that's going to be coming up in the next year in Montana somewhere. But that whole story was so very interesting, because he also kind of gave us some highlights around some key books or some key things to read about. And I dropped The Fourth Turning, because you guys were all talking about history repeating itself. And Neil and William Strauss collaborated on this book, and they talk about all these different things that kind of come back to us. All this history that we already knew about comes back.
Yeah.
Very similar to some of the Freakonomics stuff, because I've read that and I enjoy that stuff, where they're just like, we're just telling you data, just telling you facts, but this number increase, this number decrease, then this happened in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And thought that was worth sharing, especially the AI piece, that somebody got a TED Talk using AI. So if any of you are inspiring for TED Talk, could be an opportunity for you too. Thanks.
Nice. History repeats itself, and use that to your advantage. Okay, people.
That would be a great song title. A little history repeating.
I think it
Liz,
is
thank you.
actually a song title.
I think it might be. It might be already. Yeah, I put
somebody
a
asked
link to
there when.
Andre in the chat. So if you want to read more of Andre's story, there's a lot in there.
So let's do the housekeeping really quickly. Does anyone want to volunteer to be our poster today? And if anyone's not on camera and wants to be in the picture, please do, because that, that comes next.